The Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Good morning. Welcome in. Out of Bounds. ESPN 105.9 The Zone, brought to you by the 16 locations. Mississippi Ag, 16 locations. You can find your next John Deere tractor or John Deere lawnmower. Ag Up at Mississippi Ag, 2 locations in the metro area, Canton and Pearl. John Deere, America's tractor. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. You can watch the show on YouTube live. Search Out of Bounds Sports. You can hit Facebook. Search the Out of Bounds Show. We welcome in Tom Luginbill, national college football analyst with ESPN. Also has been the number one guy for recruiting at ESPN for over 12, 13, 15 years. And he will call a game here this weekend. Madison Ridgeland Academy will host Oakland out of Tennessee, who is a powerhouse. And Lugs will be on the call. Tom, good morning. Welcome in. How are you?
I'm good, man. Good morning to you. Everything good, going good this week so far?
Yeah, it is. It's a big deal, you know, when high schools get to when ESPN, well, any of the channels come in, but this game will be on ESPN2, and MRA is about 3 miles from where we are right now, and so that. Everybody at school is going to get all excited and so on, knowing that it'll be a nationally televised game. Isn't that cool?
It's interesting. I've been doing these high school games now for 15 years, and I think one of the things that gets lost in football sometimes is the pageantry and that smell in the air, the storefronts decorated with logos and pom-poms and in the small town feel that you get from high school football and on a Friday night. We become so entrenched in college football and the NFL, and then you go to some of these locations and you go to some of these communities, and it really kind of gives you a purity about the game, and it's fun and it's interesting too, because you really don't know what you're going to get. I mean, you take high school programs and you put them on national television, you don't know what those kids are going to do. And I'll tell you the other thing too, Bo, half the time that the officials end up hijacking the game just so they can get on TV.
Right. Hopefully.
And you're having penalty flags thrown everywhere. It's like, all right, enough. Let's go. Come on, let's play the game here.
Right. Well, and I hope that doesn't happen, but you're right. They do.
I do too.
They do that. But Oakland is a powerhouse. Or they went 15-0 last year and won the 6A in Tennessee, and they've got guys committed to big-time Power 5 programs. So MRA's had a heck of a run too, and they've got some guys, Stone Blanton and so on. But this Oakland program, I didn't really know anything about, Tom. These guys can play, right?
Yeah, they can. This will be their third time on our air too. So
wow.
It's kind of a testament to the caliber of program that Kevin Creasy, their head coach, has put together, and the job that they've done to sustain championship level consistency. And then when we're looking to put matchups on the air, you want to put on teams that are going to perform, that are going to be well run, that are going to be well coached, that have good players, identifiable players. It's a big deal. And I think for MRA, I mean, you have essentially a mirror image of each other. You got two schools coming off state championships, undefeated seasons. Both are named the Patriots, so you got the exact same mascots on both sidelines. It'll be a pretty good game. I've got that game, and then I've got IMG, who just beat American Heritage down in South Florida, who's American Heritage is really talented.
Oh, wow.
I got IMG versus Bishop Sycamore, a school out of Ohio, and they'll be playing on Sunday.
Okay. Well, we've discussed this for the last few years with you. There's a lot of teams in the high school football level that don't throw the ball. And
right.
But this is what's a little different. And I don't know what kind of success they'll have against Oakland, but MRA slings it around, Tom. So this Herbert Davis has committed to quarterback. Not every high school coach wants to really commit to the quarterback and throwing the football, because it's hard to get 15, 16, and 17-year-olds on the same page. But they have been slinging it around now for 6 or 7 years, and they went undefeated last year, and they've got a quarterback that already has an offer from Hugh Freeze and Liberty. And he's got some more offers, but he's not but a sophomore, this kid, John White. And so I just thought it's something, as you do your prep the next 4 or 5 days, one thing that you will see is they're committed to throwing the football, which doesn't always happen at the high school level.
Yeah, I mean, they had a kid last year in Zach Beasley, threw 26 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. I mean, they had a really, really good group. And to be honest with you, that's fun to see the ball in the air. You're
sure.
Right. At the high school level, you see a lot of wing tee, you see a lot of blended option, you see things that are really more geared towards a normal high school talent pool, where maybe you don't have the athletes to just do whatever you want to do scheme-wise, and so you're forced to be a little bit more conservative. And so I think that it makes the game more fun to call, makes the matchups more intriguing when the offenses are a little bit more diverse.
I'm looking at all these guys from Oakland that have offers. Holy smokes.
Yeah, the running back going to Georgia is a really, really good player.
Wow. Okay, so their running back is committed to Kirby Smart in Georgia. So on the MRA side, they've got Stone Blanton, who's committed to Mississippi State in baseball, but is open in his football recruitment. It's down to MSU, South Carolina, A&M, maybe another school or two. You got Davis Dalton, who's committed to Will Hall and Southern Miss, the wide receiver, and you got some other things happening here. So my point is, there's several kids that have P5 and G5 offers on both squads, which I think is pretty cool.
Well, it's really cool, and it's rare. I mean, I don't think people truly realize the numbers out there and how small the percentage is of a high school athlete that is talented enough to be recruited at the FBS level. I mean, there's just the number is so small, and then it gets even smaller as you go through college leading into the National Football League. So when you have multiple teams going against each other that have 2 to 3 to 5, maybe 10 Power 5, Group of 5, or FCS level players, that's rare.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be fun. 2:00 Saturday Central Time. Saturday afternoon, ESPN2. Oakland went undefeated. As Luke said, their running backs committed to Georgia. They have several other players that are entertaining Power 5 and G5 offers. And then that'll be at MRA, which is just a couple of miles from where we are, and it'll be on ESPN2, and Luke's will be on the call. All right, let's switch gears, Tom. I want to talk Ole Miss again and Corral. Here's what's interesting. Ole Miss is getting a ton of love this offseason, and I think they should be with Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin and the whole new cheat code of the quarterback position, which we just discussed, and the fact that Matt is the best in the Southeastern Conference. Last year they didn't really beat it. Here's what's interesting. Last year they didn't really beat anybody. They beat South Carolina. I mean, Will Muschamp's not a good head coach. They beat Kentucky 42-41 in overtime. Kentucky gave away that game. They beat Vanderbilt, who was awful, and they beat Mississippi State, who wasn't any good. But yet, because they have the quarterback and play caller and were able to score on everybody, they're getting all the love, and I understand why they are. What do you make of it?
Well, yeah, they're getting a lot of love because people have now figured out that, okay, a superior team might be taking the field, but that team better be prepared to score 40 points, because you can pretty much bank on the fact that somehow, some way, Lane Kiffin is going to turn a game into a scoring race. And really, it's the only way to help out their defense until their defense starts to add personnel that they can really, truly rely on. This is they are a team in growth and progress on the defensive side. Offensively, we know they have weapons. We know they lost a couple of weapons too, but they're going to have skill that can match up with just about anybody in the conference and most people in the country. So they're getting attention because the quarterback's exciting. Lane Kiffin draws an awful lot of attention just from his personality and his approach and some of the stuff on the sideline. And it to be honest with you, it's newsworthy. And so all of a sudden, everybody's going to start looking at box scores, and they're going to start looking at the ticker, and they're going to start pulling up highlights every week when they see Ole Miss in a 41-38 game or, a 45-42 game, even win or lose, the games are going to be so exciting. People are going to want to watch it.
So they're going to play Ely at both running back and in the slot, even more this year, according to reports and Ole Miss insiders that we've had on. So, and they're talking about having Ely and John Rice Plumlee in the slots, along with Sanders and Drummond and so on playing. And then they're going to have Henry Parrish in the backfield. Granted, Snoop Connor's kind of he's a big back. So, even though they lose Elijah Moore and Yeboah, they're bringing back a ton of dudes. And Ely and John Rice are dangerous. And then if you get them on the field in the slot and you have Henry Parrish back, there with Matt Corral, pick your poison, Tom.
Well, and that what you just outlined right there is one of the things that I think Lane Kiffin does best. It's getting all of the best players on the field at one time to create mismatches. And essentially what you're doing with Ely is you're turning him into Alvin Kamara. He's in the backfield. He might be an up back. He might be a slot. He might be motioning from one side of the field to the other side of the field. He might be motioning from one side of the field into the backfield. Now all of a sudden he becomes a running back. You got to know where he is all the time. And if you start to take that personnel you're outlining, you get them all on the field at the same time, and now all of a sudden you start formationing and shifting and motioning people to death. You give defenses so much to have to prepare for each and every week when they're leading into the contest with you that it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. I can't wait to see what Ely does this year. Pro Football Focus has him as a top 5 running back going into the NFL draft. He, as you described a month or so ago, he's what the NFL is looking for now because of his versatility and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So if he has a big year, he could be a top 3-round pick, Tom. How do you see it? Somewhere in there, right?
Yeah, I think, his size is always going to be something that might be somewhat concerning a little bit. But I think that from a skill set standpoint, he checks all the boxes. He's so instinctive and he's so versatile. And when you can align anybody, and we've talked about this in the NFL, whether it's a Marshall Faulk type back. I just mentioned Alvin Kamara. It's just those guys change the game.
I want to go through this 5-game stretch. This is going to decide whether Ole Miss has a special year, or a pretty good year, or if they don't meet the buzz of the off-season expectations. I'm going to walk you through this, Luz. Get your thoughts. All right, so here's the 5-game stretch where they got to make hay. At Bama, Arkansas at home, at Tennessee, LSU at home, at Auburn. Kind of best, worst-case scenario there, floor-ceiling type deal.
So run it to me again.
At Bama, Arkansas at home, at Tennessee, LSU at home, at Auburn.
3-2.
3-2. Yeah. And
3-2, and let's see. Yeah, I think 3-2, and I think 3-2 fairly concretely. Like, I don't see that as being a stretch at all.
I agree. Arkansas, actually, after kind of coming out hot, they may take a slight step back. At Tennessee's in transition with Heupel. LSU has 2 new play callers, which does not bode well for Orgeron, even though they have top 5 talent. And then at Auburn, boy, I think that is a more than winnable game for Kiffin and Corral, considering Auburn's in transition and their quarterback's just not special.
Well, and who's to say the LSU game is not winnable?
Right.
That's the other thing too. Is like you said, they've got top 5 talent, but let's see how they coach it up.
All right, so that 3-2. Now, if they were able to rip off 4-1, then you're talking about a super special season. Look, if they finish second in the West, and they may finish tied for second, whatever. But if they finished second in the SEC West, that wouldn't surprise you, would it? Or would it?
For Ole Miss?
Yeah.
Second in the SEC, yeah, that would surprise me.
Okay.
Yeah, That would surprise me because I think you still got to consider A&M in there, LSU. So I think you'd have to have at least two significant upsets in one season against teams that are ranked higher with better top-bottom talent, and you'd have to have them aligned in the same season.
Yep. So even though A&M's got a new QB and LSU has two new play callers, that would still surprise you if Ole Miss were to finish second and either tied with one of those and ahead of the other?
Yeah, I think you would be calling that an exceptional effort and an overachieving arc for a team that's still building into something that they want to be. You'd have to, I think, some stars really align there.
Okay.
Avoid injuries, have a break here, get the ball bounce here, and those things happen. They happen all the time.
Sure. Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Lugs joins us on the Modelo guest line. Tom, let's go to Georgia Clemson. What does it say about Kirby Smart in a year where if they should ever take advantage of the way kind of everything's set up this year, it should be this year, both in the East and even in Atlanta against Bama or whoever, that they're playing Clemson, and Clemson has to replace their quarterback, their running back, their two wide receivers, and so on, and yet Vegas has Clemson as a 3.5 point favorite. What does that say about Kirby Smart's or Vegas' maybe lack of respect for Kirby Smart's head coaching ability?
I'm wondering if that line would be the same if Eric Gilbert, Darnell Washington, and George Pickens were in the lineup. Because I think a lot of that line, at least right now, has to do with two things. You're playing on the road, right? Or you're not playing on the
Neutral,
road. You
Charlotte.
technically are playing on the road. It's neutral, but it's no different than Georgia playing in a kickoff classic in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That stadium is going to be loaded in Charlotte with Clemson fans. But I think they're depleted in personnel right now, and it's having a reflection on the line.
Okay. But, don't you agree Georgia has to win this. If you're going to be all that and special,
yeah.
You're catching Clemson at the best time to catch them in the last, 6 years or so?
And that is why this game will come down to who has the best in-game coaching effort.
Well, that's Dabo.
That is something that is something that is plagued and been a heavily criticized component of Kirby Smart's tenure.
Okay.
And so, to me, you're right. You're catching a Clemson team that is below average in the offensive line, replacing a ton of production at wideout quarterback and running back. They are loaded on defense, but you are catching them at a time where this is your moment. This is the time where you might actually have the better team. All right, so if that's the case, then what could lose it? Coaching.
Right. Okay, so I want to run that down with you. Do you agree with this? Georgia has more talent. The neutral field doesn't matter. And so it's basically a push. And is it a push on Venables and Kirby? Their numbers when Kirby was a DC and Venables has been a DC is that they're both A coordinators, although Kirby's not an A head coach. And so when you wrap all that up, it sounds like two elite defenses. It'd be interesting to see how much the two offenses can score, but the edge goes to Dabo and his offensive staff, even though they lost 1-2 years ago to South Florida, over Todd Monken, and depending on how much Kirby dabbles in the offense. Is that fair, Tom?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair based off what we've seen with these two programs up to this point. And here's the thing too, and I always go back to players, and the guy that I use is Jeremy Pruitt, right? And because we always talk about Kirby, as a coach and things of that nature, but give me name one time in Kirby Smart's coaching tenure where he did not have elite players at any stop.
Never.
LSU, Alabama, Georgia, right?
Right.
Do you remember when Jeremy Pruitt left Alabama, goes to become the defensive coordinator at Florida State, all right? elite players win the national title. Right, goes to be the defensive coordinator at Georgia. Great players. Right, ends up getting going back to Alabama. Great players, national championship. Goes to Tennessee, fired in 3 years.
Right.
I mean, there's a players matter big time in all of this, and I think that if you're Kirby Smart, that's why the patience has been waning a little bit, because fans of the University of Georgia are looking at this and they're saying, "Wait a minute, man! It's not like we're taking the field and we can't compete. So if the thing is close, or we've got to make a call late, or the perfect move has to be made strategically at the right time, all right, then and the talent's somewhat equitable, that does fall on coaching, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think patience has run a little thin with some of the Georgia faithful, because they know how talented they are.
I think it's a devastating loss if they lose, Luke. I do.
Why devastating from the
not to win the East
have on this season?
I think it's devastating in the hierarchy of, are we a top 3 or 4 program? I mean, we've got Clemson, first game of the year. You just went over all their losses. We've got all these dudes coming back. We've recruited in the top 3. One thing Kirby can do is throw down in the street with the best of them. We got the dudes, and yet Vegas doesn't even have us as a favorite. And if we lose, that's basically Dabo coaching circles around, and his staff coaching circles around us. It's just
that's fair.
I think he's Ed Ogeron. You can just understand him. And look, he's got national championship, as you know, talent profile. But and he's in the East, which, goodness gracious. I mean, this is the time, Luke, because before we know it, we'll have Texas and Oklahoma in the league, and they're going to break this thing into 4 pods probably, or divisions, whatever you want to say. And there's strong rumors that everybody's going to play everybody, and it's not going to be the cakewalk that it's been for Georgia for a while.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. My one real criticism of Georgia's program is that they recruited very poorly at quarterback.
Right.
For whatever reason, they have not been open to making that transition to going out and getting a dynamic player that changes the face of the offense. Mm-hmm. I think that is something which has surprised me a little bit, because once we saw Nick Saban finally start to say, okay, we got to we can't just be your classic drop back guy anymore. That's not going to be good enough. And so they've got it. I know they attempted to do it with Justin Fields. The timing was awful because of Jake Fromm having been there. Nobody expected him to win a national title or play for a national title as a freshman. It was an impossible situation. But since that time, boy, it has not been good under center.
That was fun. I expect Venables to run circles around JT Daniels in that offense. Low-scoring game. Clemson comes out of it with the dub, 3 to 5, 6 points. Tom Luginbill, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a great week.
Lugs on the Modelo guest line. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. The show is brought to you by the char-broiled oysters at Drago's Seafood Restaurant and Oyster Bar, and the premium cigars at Havana Smoke Shop. That's right. Get your premium sticks at Havana Smoke Shop.